Hello, greetings, friends and foes alike. Welcome here to the Prog Monster. My name is Murph. I am the host of this show, a show dedicated to progressive rock and other forms of rock music. So, we're here to do an episode of Look Back at a Classic Rock Album. This is a show I do every Monday night. I usually pick an album. Well, the parameters are to have to be older than 15 years. It's got to kind of be at least a 2.5, a 1, or a masterpiece album. And I've chosen an album tonight that's been in my playlist now for about 5 months. We're going to bring it up. It's Eloy's Time to Turn. So this is one of kind of a two-part concept for them. So Planets kind of started the concept off, and Time to Turn is kind of the finish of that concept. So this album was released April the 6th, 1982 on the Horus Sound Studio. Yes, I know. It's a Ripley's, but that's what it's called. Hanover, Germany. It's about 42 minutes in length, and this is the original copy, which came out on Harvest EMI. There is another version, a U.S. version, which came out on a U.S. version that came out. It was a little bit longer. Heavy Metal Worldwide on the UK. It's an UK issued album. This, of course, was produced by Eloy. The personnel, of course, Frank Boorman on guitar and lead vocals. Hannes Arconia on guitars, keyboards, and percussion. Klaus-Peter Metzoll on bass, Moog Taurus. Hannes Fulberth on keyboards, and Fritz Randon on drums. Fritz actually came from the past. He was with Eloy back in '75, and they brought him back here to play on this album. Additional musicians include Sabine Metzoll. It says Amy and Ann. I assume this is her daughters. I'm not sure what that means exactly, but they do vocals on Time and a Turn, which means they're probably all backup vocalists. There are a total of 7 tracks on this particular album. So overall, this album, it's not quite as Floyd sound. Well, it doesn't really have a lot of Floyd sound to it at all, like some of their other albums. It's got that spacey element, but it's not as predominant as I'm used to. It sounds a little more symphonic to me. A large use of the synthesizers here, very dominant throughout the album. Not totally out of league with Eloy. They tend to be like that. The rhythm section, of course, is its normal kind of heaviness. Maybe a little heavier than normal, I guess. The bass and the drums very forward on this, very pulsating type sounds, which is normal for Eloy. They like to have that boom, boom going on the whole time throughout the album. One of the reasons I like them is their music is very heavy at times, very pulsating, lots of solos throughout the album. The vocals are not great, but it is Frank Boorman singing. But they're not bad. I've gotten kind of used to his vocals. They don't really bother me much anymore. So we're going to kind of break the album down a bit, song by song, which is what I normally like to do. So I'm just going to, I'll hold it up with them. So the opening track is called Through a Somber Galaxy. So this one's about 6 minutes in length. It's got a nice clear sounding keyboard part at the opening. The bass is very frontal, as I said. And it does pick up speed as the song goes along as well. It's kind of a heavy track. Really good instrumentation. Dominant forward. All the instruments pretty strong. The guitar solo the first part is kind of catchy. Second part is a little bit strange, not terribly out of league, but a little bit different. The vocals are typical, clear sounding Frank Boorman very German accented, as you would expect. A little bit, maybe a little bit in the high range as well. A catchy rhythm beat throughout the song, and the guitar riff is good as well. I would say this is a strong keyboard layered but catchy as hell track. Probably my favorite track, to be honest with you. I think it's probably my favorite track on the album. The next song ups are all equally as good, almost a little bit longer, almost but closer to 6.5 minutes. Behind the Wall of Imagination is this track. Opens with a nice keyboard and harmonic guitar part. I think they're trying to capture that kind of high resolution keyboard sound by adding the harmonic acoustic guitar part in there, which is quite good actually. The drums, again, the drums and the bass, very heavy, very pulsating. The vocals again are clear and typical of Eloy. You've got synthesizers are very frontal in this, with some keyboards kind of supporting it, I guess maybe you might want to call it that. The solo is timely and good and lengthy and very, I guess, kind of forward in the mix. Nice good synthesizer effects on this track, and maybe the bass is very dominant. I think the bass may be the most dominant instrument on this track. The bass is very forward with Eloy, much more than a lot of bands. Usually with a lot of bands, the bass player is usually one of the weaker players, so they kind of have them in there to give fill to the background, but don't necessarily want them to be forward so people hear too much of them. The next track is called Time to Turn. I do like this one too. So the first 3 tracks are probably my favorite tracks on the album. They kind of set the pace for this. This has got a nice, very heavy bass, catchy riff part at the beginning. The whole rhythm section is dominant. It pulses, has typical Eloy sound to it. The synthesizers are dominant. The acoustic guitar part is quite good, actually. It's not overbearing either. Lots of spare space effects here. The female vocals on this track are pretty good and add a kind of a background feel to it, which is different for them. They don't normally use other vocalists, but in this case it's not too bad. The guitar parts are heavy, and the solo is very loud, very a little bit distant sounding, I guess maybe you might want to call it. Next track up is called Magic Mirrors. It opens with a nice synthesizer part and a guitar riff, so they kind of give it that kind of build up. They use slow melodic. It's very slow, very melodic. Nothing really happening, however, here. It's just a normal kind of Eloy sound, a slow melodic sound with his talking. A bit more spacey sounding than some of the other the beginning tracks, the first 3. But it's not totally overwhelmingly spacey like you might normally get with Eloy, but it does have its spacey element. End of the Odyssey, which is the longest track on the album. Not one of my favorites. Probably at this point, it might be my least favorite track on the album. It's very symphonic, nice synthesizer-driven opening part. Once again, a heavy rhythm section, very pulsating, and melodic, typical long Eloy track. It just kind of drones along, boom, like just pounding it out, But it's not a terrible track. I did give it a 6, but I think I probably ranked it as the worst track on the album. The next one is called The Flash. I like this one a little bit better. Nice, heavy, rhythmatic track. Fast paced. This one's faster than most of the other tracks. The keyboard solo is dominant in the middle of the track, and then you've got some nice vocals, which are typical, and it continues with this keyboard solo, which kind of takes, I think, is the most dominant part of this track. And the final track on the album is Say It Is Really True, which is the last track. It's It's very different from the other tracks. It opens with a kind of an acoustic guitar part with some synthesizers to try to give it fill in the backside. The vocals are clear and slow and melodic. It's very spacey, like keyboard and synthesizer background. Yeah, it's a much different sounding song. The other's a little bit more spacey oriented, a typical kind of slow melodic Eloy song. So overall, I like this album. I don't know if it's one of my favorites, but I bet you eventually, once I'm finished with all the Eloy albums and do the ranking, this is going to be a top 5 album. I think it's quite good. It's a good headphones album too, which is something I appreciate. So I'm gonna drink here. My throat just is burning now. So that's my take on Eloy's Time to Turn album, released in 1982. I'm not sure. I think this is like maybe their 7th or 8th studio album. Might even be a little bit further along than that. I didn't really check. Anyways, I hope you like this episode. Please hit the like and subscribe. If you want to be reminded for next Monday night's look back at a classic rock album, you can hit the notification bell. If you have anything to say about Eloy in general, or the band, or specifically, or about this album, or about Planets, which is kind of the front half of the album, you can leave those comments in the comment section below. And we will see you all next Monday night for another look back at another classic rock album. Take care. Have yourself a good one. And goodbye here from the Prog Monster.